drum speaks what the tongue cannot say. Long before diagnosis, before therapy chairs, before the word trauma became common in the mouths of the wounded, there was the drum. Not as entertainment, not as background noise, but as healer, as guide, as sacred voice for the unspeakable. In Africa, the drum was never just an instrument. It was medicine. It was memory. It was the breath of the ancestors, shaped into sound. When words failed, the drum knew what to say. It is easy in today's world to hear rhythm as music. But in the villages, shrines, and forests of our past, rhythm was language. It was how a soul cried out when it had no mouth. It was how the spirits responded when the people needed direction. The drum told the living when to grieve, when to prepare, when to let go, when to fight, and when to return. Through its beat, the body remembered what the mind had forgotten. Through its pulse, the ancestors reached across time to bring lost children home. In sacred ceremonies, different drums served different purposes, each with a voice of its own. The bata with its talking tones was used in Yoruba rites to communicate with the Orisha. The ngoma in Central Africa meant both drum and healing because they were never separate. The djembe, carved from hollow wood and goat skin, summoned both birth and battle. And the ekwe, hewn from trees in Igbo lands, carried messages across villages and into the spirit world. These were not objects, they were portals. But how? How does rhythm, something so simple, reach into the heart of grief? How does sound, shaped by hands and breath, call back a wandering soul or calm a mother who's lost everything? How can a beat, just a beat, push back madness, invite possession, or reopen the channels of memory after generations of silence? That is the mystery we're walking into. Not a performance, but a pilgrimage. Because if you listen closely, not just with your ears, but with your bones, you might discover that what you've called music all your life was actually medicine trying to heal you, and the drum is still speaking. Long before hospitals, prescriptions, or psychological terms, there were gatherings beneath the stars, circles of breath and flame, and always the beat of the drum. Across Africa, in every region, among countless tribes and tongues, the drum was the first healer. It did not ask questions. It did not judge. It responded to pain with rhythm, to silence with sound, to fragmentation with frequency. It knew what to do long before modern medicine tried to explain it. In Yoruba lands, Dagara villages, Zulu homesteads, Ewe ceremonies, and Kongo temples, the drum was not part of the healing, it was the healing. Among the Yoruba, the use of drums in healing was tied to the divine itself. The talking drum could mimic human speech and was used to call specific Orisha into ceremony. These weren't just gods, they were forces of nature, and each one responded to a unique rhythm. The presence of illness was seen not as a problem of the body alone, but of spiritual disconnection. A drum could re-establish that connection. Its beat, precise and ancestral, opened the gates for spirits to enter and realign what had been thrown out of balance. The Dagara people of Burkina Faso believed that every sickness was the soul's way of asking for reunion. With purpose, with the ancestors, with the land. Their healing ceremonies were rhythmic journeys. The drum acted as the guide. When someone had gone mad or broken under the weight of grief, they were not hidden away. They were brought to the fire where the drums would play until something inside them remembered who they were. Through rhythm, the soul found its way back. In the Zulu tradition, drums were used in rituals of war and mourning, and often in the same ceremony. Warriors were not only trained physically, they were initiated spiritually. Before battle, the drum awakened the deeper self, not just courage but ancestral strength. After loss, the same drum calmed grieving mothers, helping them cry in time with the rhythm, letting their sorrow be carried by something stronger than themselves. The drum held them. It didn't fix their pain, but it gave it form. And in that form, healing began. The Yu people of Ghana and Togo also understood the drum as more than musical. In their healing rites, rhythm was not performed. It was prescribed. Specific patterns were used to expel spiritual affliction. A dissonant beat could jolt a broken soul back into place. A soft, pulsing rhythm could soothe the body racked by emotional storms. It wasn't entertainment, it was precision. An ancestral science passed through generations of drummers who were also doctors of the invisible. Nowhere is this more explicit than among the Kongo people, where the very word for drum, ngoma, also means healing. This is not metaphor, it is a linguistic truth. In Kikongo, to say bring the drum was also to say bring the healing. That overlap was not accidental. The Kongo believed that every illness had both a physical and spiritual root. The drum addressed both. In possession rituals, Ngoma drums called spirits to speak through mediums. In mourning ceremonies, they channeled the dead. In rites of restoration, they broke curses. The drummer was not a musician. He was a conduit between worlds. To all these traditions, the drum was not simply an object. It was an extension of the ancestors themselves. Its wood came from sacred trees. Its skin from animals ritually prepared. Its sound carried the breath of elders who had gone before. When it spoke with authority that the body obeyed, the spirit remembered, and the mind could not resist. It could calm madness, not by reason, but by resonance. It could bring home the fragmented soul because its beat was the only language that the broken parts still understood. This was medicine without pills. This was therapy without words. This was the drum, beating not just in the circle but in the chest, reminding everyone who heard it that healing is not a secret. It's a rhythm. And Africa knew that rhythm long before the world gave it a name. In African spiritual medicine, no sound is random. Every beat, every pause, every echo holds intention. Just as the body has a rhythm, the pulse, the breath, the cycle of sleep and waking, so too does the spirit. And when that spirit falls out of sync, when it forgets its pace or loses its way, the drum becomes the tuning fork. Across the continent, different rhythms were crafted not just for events, but for conditions of the soul. In this way, rhythm was diagnosis, prescription, and cure. Fast polyrhythms were often used in rites of exorcism and trance. The layered intensity of multiple drums playing cross patterns created a sonic environment that could not be ignored. These rhythms didn't soothe, they provoked. They shook the body, stirred the breath, fractured the conscious mind's grip on reality. In ceremonies where spirits were summoned or expelled, the faster the rhythm, the more easily the body gave way to trance. These rhythms pushed energy through the nervous system like fire through dry grass. They weren't violent, but they were fierce. Their purpose was to move what had been stuck, to shake loose what had become too tightly wound. In contrast, mourning required another kind of sound. Rolling low rhythms played on deep drums with a steady hand were used in funerals and grief rituals. These beats mirrored the slow heaving of a chest heavy with sorrow. They gave space for lament, holding the weeping in a rhythm that reminded them they were not alone. These drums didn't try to stop the tears. They carried them. They said, "Cry, but don't fall apart. Grieve, but let us walk with you." In many traditions, such rhythms were played for days, marking the sacred transition between this life and the next, keeping the soul company as it moved on. Then there were the syncopated beats, rhythms that bounced, paused, teased the ear. These were used during birth ceremonies, naming rituals and rites of passage. Their playful unpredictability echoed the wonder and uncertainty of new life. In these moments, the drum was celebration and structure. It welcomed the spirit into the world with a pattern that said, "You belong here. You are part of this rhythm. You are not alone." These ceremonies didn't just announce a child's arrival. They rhythmically sealed their place in the community and the cosmos. Not all rhythms were for everyone. In many traditions, certain drum patterns were considered sacred and could only be played by initiated priests or healers. To play them incorrectly or without permission was to risk spiritual backlash. These rhythms were encoded with meaning. They weren't just instructions, they were invitations to gods, ancestors, and spirits. In the hands of the uninitiated, they could call down energies that could not be controlled. Healing was powerful, but it was also dangerous. That's why it required training, not just technical skill, but spiritual maturity. Today, modern science is beginning to uncover what African traditions have known for centuries. Rhythmic drumming can stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of the body responsible for rest, recovery, and healing. Patterns of steady beat can synchronize brainwaves, guiding the mind from chaotic states into calm, meditative rhythms. The effects of drumming on the human body are measurable. Lowered cortisol levels, improved mood, even reduction in chronic pain. But for our ancestors, these weren't discoveries, they were truths passed down in ceremony, tested in firelight, proven in healing. To heal in the African context was never just to treat symptoms, it was to restore harmony. The drum didn't aim to silence the pain, it aimed to find its rhythm, its song, and guide it home. Whether calming the grief-stricken, inducing trance, or marking a soul's return to balance, rhythm was medicine. It was precise, it was sacred, and it still is. In many African traditions, healing is not a quiet process. It is ecstatic, embodied, alive. It moves through rhythm and sweat, voice and motion. Trance is not an escape. It is an opening, a sacred portal that allows the spirit to breathe again. In healing ceremonies across the continent, trance dancing is central. But it is not a performance. It is a spiritual technology, a tool for the body to unlock, for the soul to speak, and for the divine to enter. During spirit possession, the transformation is unmistakable. The body begins to tremble, shaking not from fear but from frequency. The breath shifts, deepens, becomes erratic. A new rhythm enters, the rhythm of the spirit arriving. Then the voice changes. Sometimes the person cries. Sometimes they speak languages not known to them. Sometimes they shout. Sometimes they sing. But what emerges is not the self as we know it. It is something older, something greater, something sacred. In Yoruba traditions, the Orisha respond to specific drum patterns. Each deity has its own rhythm, and when that rhythm is played, the spirit comes. The devotee may begin to move, slowly at first, then wildly until they are no longer seen as themselves. In that moment, they are the Orisha. The community treats them with reverence, not because they are pretending, but because they have become a vessel. The Orisha uses their body to bless, to speak, to correct what has gone wrong. Among the Fon people of Benin, Vodun ceremonies invoke similar processes. Here, possession is a sign of spiritual alignment, not madness. When a person is mounted by a spirit, the community listens. Messages are delivered, healings are performed. The trance is not feared, it is welcomed. A sign that the divine is near, that help has arrived. The body becomes a bridge, The drum, the driver. In the Kongo tradition, spirit calling is used to summon ancestral beings who help retrieve lost fragments of the soul. When someone has suffered severe trauma, violence, grief, exile, it is believed that part of their spirit may leave the body. Words won't bring it back. Logic won't bring it back. But the drum might. Through specific rhythms accompanied by chants and guided dance, the fractured soul is called home. The ancestors are invited to guide the process. And as the rhythm intensifies, the healing begins. Not as a gentle unfolding, but as a thunderous return. These rituals do not pathologize possession. They do not call it illness. They call it sacred. In the West, these states are often labeled as dissociation, as psychosis, as breakdowns. But in the African spiritual worldview, they are breakthroughs. They are how the spirit speaks when the mind is overwhelmed. They are how the body becomes a sanctuary for energies that transcend time. They are the first language of the divine. The drum plays a central role in these experiences. Its rhythm creates the conditions necessary for the veil between worlds to lift. It retunes the body. It calibrates the heartbeat to the frequency of the ancestors. It calls spirits not just with sound, but with memory. And as the beat deepens, the portal opens. The spirit steps in. And healing, true healing, begins. When the soul has wandered too far, it won't answer to words, but it will answer to the drum. That is why in every corner of the continent, drums are treated with reverence. They are not instruments, they are keys. Keys that unlock the door between the visible and invisible, between the broken and the whole, between the now and the eternal. In the hands of a trained drummer, that key can find the lost. And through the shaking, the breathing, the voice of the spirit rising, what was once lost is found again. In African healing traditions, wellness is not a solitary pursuit. The soul does not heal in isolation. It heals in circles, in rhythm, in story, in song. The drum once again stands at the center of this collective space. It does not belong to one person. It belongs to the group. And in that group, each person becomes a drum, a vibration, a necessary part of the medicine. The African drum circle is not a concert. It is a ceremony. Not just a gathering of musicians, but a web of souls weaving grief and joy into sacred form. The Dagara people of Burkina Faso have long practiced grief rituals that stretch over days. These are not quiet events. They are eruptive, rhythmic, and raw. When someone dies or when collective sorrow weighs heavily on the community, the people gather. The drums begin. Not softly, but urgently. The rhythm shakes the ground, opens the spirit, and invites release. Elders chant. Women wail. Men beat drums with hands that remember. And as the rhythm intensifies, so does the emotion. People cry, scream, dance, fall to their knees. But no one is alone. Everyone is held by the beat. In these ceremonies, the drum becomes an instrument of catharsis. It channels the grief, the rage, the buried sorrow that words cannot reach. It says what cannot be said. It carries the pain of one person and transforms it into a shared experience, where healing begins not by removing suffering, but by acknowledging it fully. The rhythm does not silence the pain, it reshapes it. And in the call and response pattern that often anchors the ritual, a healing architecture is formed. One drum calls, another answers. One voice rises, others respond. No one is forgotten. Everyone is necessary. This rhythmic exchange mirrors what science now calls co-regulation. Through the phenomenon of mirror neurons, our bodies naturally sync to the movements and emotions of others. In the drum circle, this synchronization becomes sacred. When one person grieves aloud, others feel it. When one person begins to heal, others do too. Group drumming has been shown to trigger oxytocin release, the chemical of bonding, of connection, of love. The circle becomes a neurological haven where the body lets go because it feels safe, seen, and supported. There is also the concept of limbic resonance, where shared emotional states harmonize nervous systems. In African traditions, this isn't abstract science, it's felt reality. It's the moment when everyone begins to sway in time, when the drums, the cries, the stomps, and the laughter blend into one pulsating frequency. That is the moment of healing. Not when the pain disappears, but when the isolation around it does. The wound is still there, but it breathes now, it sings now, it pulses with something bigger than itself. This collective approach to healing challenges the individualistic lens of modern therapy. In the drum circle, you are not expected to fix yourself alone. Your healing is my healing. Your rhythm is my rhythm. Your voice is part of the larger song. There is no separation between the personal and the communal. The community doesn't just witness the healing, they become it. So when the drums play and the people gather, something ancient returns. A memory of how healing once sounded. A memory of what it means to be human. Not in silence, but in sound. Not in separation, but in rhythm. In these circles, the drum doesn't just speak, it listens. And in the vibration it sends back, something breaks open, something rises, and something lost finds its way home. When Africans were stolen from their homelands, the captors thought they were taking only bodies. But they forgot that rhythm cannot be chained. Though drums were banned on plantations, their memory could not be erased. It lived in the breath, in the bone, in the pulse of every enslaved person who carried the sound of home in their blood. The drum crossed the Atlantic, not as cargo but as a resistance. It arrived not in the belly of the ship, but in the hearts of the people. And everywhere they landed, it began to speak again. In Brazil, the sacred rhythm survived through candomblé. Here, the deities called orixás are honored with music, dance, and drum ceremonies that mirror those of West Africa. Each orixa responds to a specific rhythm played on the atabaque drums. When the drums begin, the devotees dance themselves into possession, embodying the spirits in public ritual. These are not performances. They are acts of survival. They are echoes of a culture that refused to die. In Cuba, Santeria preserves the same structure. The bata drums are central to ceremony, and like their Yoruba counterparts, they are consecrated. Only initiated drummers may play them in sacred rites. The rhythms call down the orisha, summon healing, and remind the people that no matter how many centuries pass, the gods still listen. The enslaved had their tongues beaten silent, but the drum still spoke. In Haiti, voodoo ceremonies rely on the drum to open the spiritual gates. The rhythms, passed down in secret from generation to generation, guide spirits known as the Lua into the body of the devotee. Possession is healing. Drumming is the bridge. And though Western eyes often misunderstood this ritual as hysteria or superstition, they were and still are complex systems of emotional, physical, and communal restoration. Even in the United States, where drums were outlawed in many slave states, the rhythm found a way. It hid in the stomp and clap of ring shouts. It rose in the holy dancing of black churches. It shook the wooden floors of praise houses, where enslaved Africans merged Christian hymns with ancestral cadence. Shout music, still heard in Pentecostal churches today, carries the same pulse. The body trembling, the feet moving, the spirit catching fire. The drum may not be visible, but it is felt. It never left. Today we see the rhythm returning with new names and a renewed purpose. African drumming has found its way into trauma, healing, and PTSD therapy. Drum circles are being used in hospitals, prisons, and wellness spaces to reduce anxiety, stimulate memory, and build connection. For many in the African diaspora, these practices are not trends. They are a reclamation. They are healing processes that reconnect the descendants of the enslaved with the frequency their ancestors never stopped humming. In Black wellness spaces, the return of the drum is often accompanied by rituals that echo traditional practice. Libations are poured, names of ancestors are called, movements flow with the beat, not for choreography, but for catharsis. These moments are not about show, they are about remembering. And in that remembering, healing begins again. Yet, as drums become popular in mainstream wellness culture, a distinction must be made. There is a vast difference between the drum as entertainment and the drum as medicine. One is for applause, the other is for alignment. One is played to impress, the other is played to invite. The sacred drum is not meant to entertain, it is meant to transform, to cleanse, to return. And when it is used in its original context, it does all of that and more. So the rhythm continues, not as an echo, but as a heartbeat. Across oceans, across generations, across trauma and survival, the drum has endured. It is still calling, still healing, still remembering for those who were made to forget. In every beat, the ancestors breathe. In every vibration, they remember us. This is not poetry. It is truth. The drum is not history. It is breath. It is bone. It is the echo of something too old to forget and too sacred to silence. It is the voice of memory when our mouths cannot speak. It is the touch of the divine when our bodies are too tired to reach. The drum is not an artifact. It is alive. It moves through us still. For many, the drum seems like something of the past, an instrument reserved for ceremony, folklore, or performance. But for those who remember, the drum has never stopped speaking. Its rhythm still finds the broken places. It still speaks to grief, still stirs the body in trance, still calls the soul home. The hands that play it now are not just making music, they are carrying a lineage, a medicine, a vibration passed from heartbeat to heartbeat across time. The drum heals not by forgetting the wound, but by sounding it out, by letting it be heard, by giving it a rhythm to move through. The drum makes pain bearable. It gives shape to the formless ache. And in that shape, we find ourselves again, not as individuals, but as parts of a larger story. A story of survival, a story of sound, a story of return. Imagine now a circle beneath the stars. A fire burns at the center. Around it, people gather. Some weeping, some laughing, some dancing, some still. The drums begin. Not loud at first, but steady. The rhythm catches one, then another. Someone starts to move. Another begins to hum. A child claps without knowing why. An elder begins to chant a name long forgotten. And in that moment under that night sky, healing happens. Not because someone planned it, but because the drum made space for it. This is the gift the ancestors left us. A tool that needs no translation. A language older than words. A sound that doesn't ask for permission. It simply moves through the body, opening doors the mind forgot were there. And when we allow ourselves to feel it, not just with our ears but with our chest, our skin, our soul, we come back into rhythm. We come back to ourselves. So this is not just a conclusion, it is an invitation, an invocation, a remembering. The drum is not waiting in a museum. It is waiting in you. It is waiting in your breath, in your belly, in your footsteps. And when it calls, it does not need to shout. It speaks in pulse. It speaks in pressure. It speaks in the way your chest tightens when you hear a rhythm that knows your name. If your spirit is tired, if you've forgotten who you are, don't speak. Listen. The drum is already calling you home.